We're going to go ahead and begin our Bible study session. And I think most of you know my name is Larry Ping. My family's here with me. My wife is back at the Marshalls along with about 50 other sick people. So anyways, we're glad to be here and to be able to spend a day with you in our study of God's Word. Before we begin, I believe Rob's going to lead us in a word of prayer. So after he's done with that, we'll go ahead and begin our class session. All right, thank you, Rob. Certainly appreciate everybody coming out and growingly worse weather conditions again. I think it's going to get worse as the day goes along, so appreciate you being out, being safe. Lord willing, tonight, if we are able to meet, my son Trey will be preaching, so we're going to come out here, a good sermon. That would be a good time to come out and be with us. All right, so this morning, just for a few moments, I wanted to talk about a facet of authority that we don't normally talk about, okay, that some Christians aren't that familiar with it and need to be. All right, that is the arm of authority that is related to expediency. That we don't talk about expediency a whole lot among the members of the Lord's body. Now, to build up and to get there, just real quick, I want to do some background with you. When it comes to authority, who has all the authority today? Who has all authority? Okay, Christ has it. And how do you know that? He said so in Matthew 28. I have been given all authority, which leaves how much for us? How much authority do we have? We don't have any because he has all of it. Okay, so by his own statement, he has it there in Matthew 28 and verse 18. What book in the Bible talks about twice that in those days there were no kings and every man did that which was right in his own eyes? What book of the Bible tells us that twice? I think I heard somebody say it. Judges. Okay, Judges 17:6 and Judges 21:25 both say that verbatim, meaning there was no leadership, there was no authority, nobody was minding any authority. And the result of that is every man was doing what he thought was right. Okay, we might refer to that as anarchy, when everybody is doing what they want to do. Okay, and of course, we don't live in that sort of society religiously, shouldn't be today. All right, what are the three ways that we derive authority for everything we do, everything we teach? There are three ways that we arrive at those places. What are those three ways? Okay, so I heard, direct command or direct statement from God. If we have one of those, that authorizes us to do something. Give me an example of one of those. What's an example of a direct statement of God? Okay, believe, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. Mark 16:16. Is that a direct command? It most certainly is, okay? I thought I heard somebody else say approved apostolic example. I think I heard somebody say that. Okay, and if we see the early church and apostles doing something, then we're authorized to do that, aren't we? Give me an example of one of those in the Bible. Okay, meeting on. So what you're saying is there is no direct statement from God saying, "Thou shalt meet on Sunday." Is that true? That's true. Is there any place in the Bible that says that? It doesn't say that, does it? Okay, but as you insinuate, we have examples. Where at? Where do we find in the Bible Christians meeting on the first day of the week? Okay, Acts 20 and verse 7. upon the first day of the week, the disciples gathered together, okay, to break bread. And Paul was there in the city of Troas. Okay, I don't think I heard the third one. Okay, necessary inference, or some folks prefer forced conclusion, which, both of them are essentially the same. Okay, give me an example of something that we do today because of a necessary inference or forced conclusion. Something that we'll do in this building today. Okay, which part of the Lord's Supper is done because of necessary inference? Okay, we have the bread and the fruit of the vine, okay, which essentially are part of direct commands from who? From God or Christ, as he instituted the Lord's Supper in Matthew 26. Okay, so the Lord's Supper actually is a place to see all three of them. Okay, we have a direct statement to do it. Take, eat, or drink. Those are direct statements, right? Okay, do we have a direct statement to do this on the first day of the week? No, I would be in error if I got up here today and said that we have a direct statement from God or command from God to do this on the first day of the week. That's actually a false statement, isn't it? Okay, part of it is. The direct statement is to do it on the first day of the week is through example. And Harold's already mentioned there in Acts 20 and verse 7. But you're right. There's something about the Lord's Supper that we use necessary inference for. Okay, it's not to do it, or not what day to do it, but what? How often we do it, the frequency that we do it. How often do we do this? Every first day of the week. You guys show me the verse that says, do this every first day of the week. You find that anywhere? We can find that. How long will we be looking for that? We'd be looking for forever because there's no verse. Do we have an approved example that shows them doing it every first day of the week? Not really. Then how are we forced to conclude that they did this every first day of the week? Who can explain that? And it comes from Acts 20 and verse 7 again. How do you explain to somebody that we are forced to conclude that the early disciples did this every first day of the week? We need to be able to do that, right? Because if we can't do that, then we might as well not do it ourselves. Because most religious groups don't do it every first day of the week, do they? Some do it quarterly and some do it semi-annually on special holidays, or as the elders of the church deem, hey, today we're going to take the Lord's Supper. Somebody explain to me how you can use forced conclusion to teach that. Any takers on that? Okay. I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here for a second. Ed, I agree with you, but that doesn't say every first day of the week, does it? Is the word every in Acts 20 verse 7? No. Okay, now what? Okay. Okay, so you're open to the possibility that maybe they didn't do it every first day of the week? Oh, you're not open to that? Because I thought that's what it sounded like. Okay. You are? Okay.
Listen, you got to understand, I'm not sitting here arguing against what we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Christ saying to do it as often as you eat regularly.
Okay.
I wouldn't be opposed to doing it at home on Thursday night.
Okay. Well, there's a couple problems with that statement. As often as you eat and drink this cup, you do it until you proclaim the Lord's death. He said that, and Paul reiterated that in 1 Corinthians 11 as he was reminding them. Okay. Let's take the second statement there. Okay. What day of the week did they do it? First day of the week. Okay. Which, by the way, does what? Eliminates every other day. Okay. Sunday, how many Sundays are there? There's only one. Okay. So we do it the way they did it. Okay. In Acts 20 and verse 7. Okay. Let me give you an Old Testament example. Okay. One of the 10 Commandments was to remember what day? Remember the Sabbath day to do what? To keep it holy. Okay? Did he say, remember every Sabbath day? No. Did he say remember the first Sabbath day of the month? Did he say that? No, he just said remember the Sabbath day, didn't he? And do you remember with me when Moses said, God, I'm confused. Could you reiterate to me which Sabbath day you want us to keep? Do you remember Moses saying that? Did Moses say that? He did not. What did Moses understand about remembering the Sabbath day? He was forced to conclude that God meant every Sabbath day. And why is that? Because every week has a what? Every week has a Sabbath day. And did they keep every Sabbath day? You better believe they did. Anybody ever try to violate that? Yes? Tell us about it. Who did? Okay. We have a guy who was picking up sticks in the book of Numbers, who was picking up sticks, just gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. What happened to him? He was stoned to death. You remember at first they didn't know how to deal with that, but after they consulted Moses and the law, he was stoned to death because he violated the Sabbath. And of course, there's other occurrences throughout of them violating the Sabbath. I'm sorry? The manna that, that they would. Yeah. And on Fridays when they were collecting food or manna, on Friday they were to collect how many days worth? 2. Why? Because on the Sabbath day, they were not to go out and do any gathering or working. Which Sabbath day do you think God had in mind with that law? All of them. All right, so that's a great way to point out. It's a very similar command. We see them get together on the first day of the week. We are forced to conclude they did it how often? Every first day of the week. And the same rule applies here. How many weeks has a first day? They all do. Okay, so therefore we act in the same way that they did on the first day of the week, that we will do this every first day of the week. So you're right. The forced conclusion is a part of that. So on that, just real quick before we move on. How often do you celebrate an event? Well, you celebrate it as often as it comes around. How often do you celebrate a birthday? Once a year. Why? Who said that? Laura, how come you celebrate your birthday? Why not twice a year? Okay, you're only born once. Okay, your birthday only comes around how many times a year? One time a year. That's why you do it. One time. That's how often that comes around. How often does the first day of the week come around? Every first day. All right, so that's how we're forced to conclude that they did this on the first day of the week. Now, somebody may say, you know what? I think doing that every first day of the week makes it lose its significance. I've heard that argument before, haven't you? Okay, you guys do that 52 or sometimes 53 times a year, and that makes it lose its significance. How would you respond to that? Is there any way to respond to that? Yeah, there is a way. Whose fault is that? Is that God's fault? That's not God's fault. Whose fault is that? That's my fault. That's my fault. Because I read in 1 Corinthians 11 that when I am doing this, that I'm to be discerning what? Discerning the Lord's body. Thinking about his body and his blood. All right, so those ways of deriving authority can be seen in the Lord's Supper very clearly. Okay, all 3 aspects of it. Okay? Now, who came up with that idea of deriving authority? Those 3 ways. Anybody ever seen the acronym CENI? CENI. Anybody know what that stands for? CENI. Command, example, necessary, inference. And usually when you see somebody bringing that up, they're making fun of people who derive authority for what they do in those ways. They tell me that Alexander Campbell's the first one to start that. Is that true? Is Alexander Campbell the one who started that process? No. Didn't they use that in the Bible? They did. Okay, we don't have time to get into it today. But I urge you to go read the entirety of Acts 15. Okay, when they had a problem with Gentiles who became Christians. Okay, there was a controversy over whether or not those Gentile Christians needed to be what? Circumcised. And they used a direct statement from God from the book of Amos They used apostolic approved example and a forced conclusion to answer the question that no, a Gentile convert does not need to be circumcised. Okay, go read it and look at it, and you'll find that that is to be true. Okay, the silence of Scripture, the silence of God, is another arm of authority. Okay, this is a real simple one. The fact that God is silent on a subject, is that prohibitive or permissive? Does that permit us to do whatever we want or prohibit us from doing whatever we want? It's one or the other. It's nowhere in the middle or beyond either one. Is it permissive or prohibitive? It's prohibitive. Okay, once again, you can see that in the book of Acts 15 and verse 24, okay, where they talk about no such command. We've given no such command to you concerning Gentile converts. Okay, and why did they give no such command? Because God gave them no such command. He was silent on that, meaning we don't have the right to trample the silence of God and just to do whatever we want to do. Okay, so that's just a little super quick cliff notes on authority. We could probably make a whole series on that. Okay, one more thing before we get into expediency. There are two different kinds of authority that we need to be familiar with, that we see in the Bible. Anybody know what they are? The two different kinds of authority. We should be familiar with all of these things. We ought to be able to sit down and talk with folks about these things. There's two kinds. There's general, and then there's what? Specific authority. And we need to know the difference between the two. When there's general authority, okay, that's where the idea of expediency comes in. Okay? For instance, let's take the Great Commission. Go into all the world. Okay? Let's stop there just for a moment. The word go, are we authorized to go? We are. He said to go, didn't he? Go. All right, so how do we go? Are we allowed to decide how we go and teach? Could I walk? Could I run? Did anybody run in the Bible to teach the gospel? Philip did in the book of Acts chapter 8. Could I take a bus? Could I take an airplane? Train? Could I skip? Could I trot? Could I gallop? Could I crawl? Okay. The point is we're doing what? We're going. Okay, that's general authority. Okay, that's where the realm of expediency comes into play. What's the opposite of general authority? What's the other one? Specific authority. Okay, when God specifies, and this kind of goes back to our conversation a couple of moments ago. When God specifies something, He eliminates all other possibilities. Okay? Can somebody give me a good Old Testament example of specific authority that would paint the picture well for us? Tell me something about Noah. What's Noah famous for? Building an ark. Out of gopher wood. Okay, that's pretty what? That gopher wood's pretty specific, isn't it? Now, do you remember when God said, make thee an ark of gopher wood, not ash, not cedar, not elm, not oak, and list every other possible tree that He could have used? Did He do that? He just said what? Make thee an ark of gopher wood. He was specific, which meant He eliminated all other woods. Okay? So, when there's specific authority, okay, there's no room for me to do whatever I want concerning that. So back to the Great Commission, go into all the world and teach what? The gospel. Okay, that's specific. I'm not going to take a train into some part of the world and teach whatever I want. Okay, the Bible specifies what I'm going to teach. Go, that's generic, and teach the gospel, that's specific. Okay, so that's hopefully pretty easy to understand. Okay, the reason that's important to know that is because you have a lot of people who will try to tell us, God didn't say we couldn't do this. Have you been told that before? God didn't say we couldn't do it this way or we couldn't do it that way. Does He have to? No. He does that when He specifies. He specifies. For instance, musically, are we going to worship God today? We have music, right? I was told a few weeks ago when they found out that I was a member of the church, oh, you guys don't have, you're the ones who don't have any music. Is that true? That's not true. We have music. Okay? We have vocal music. We have singing. Singing's specific, isn't it? Which, by the way, does what? What did we just decide? When God specifies, what does he do? He eliminates all other possibilities. So, even though there's not very many other possibilities, musically speaking, God said to what? To sing to us in the New Testament. Okay. Now, let's get into expediency. I'm going to open our Bibles to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Okay. And while we're turning there, I had a conversation several years ago with some elders who had never heard, they never were taught or studied the topic of expediency. That's sad, isn't it? Right? Because they, of all people, they ought to be familiar with this. Right? But I found over the years that a lot of folks aren't as familiar with it as they should be. Don?
We have a lot of people in the world that says that they don't have to be immersed to be baptized. They
Yeah.
have to be sprinkled, whatever else they decide.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the word baptism itself means what? To immerse. Okay? Besides the fact, just touching on that real quick, the eunuch was he taken down to the water? Yeah. Was he buried in the water? Yes, because he was brought up out of the water. That's what Philip did for him. The same for the Lord, by the way, in Matthew 3. The Bible says when he came up out of the water, which means what? There's a forced conclusion. If he came up out of the water, what's that mean? He had to go down into the water. Okay? We don't even need any of those things necessarily, because the word baptism itself means what? It means immersion. Okay? Colossians 2 verse 12 talks about that we're buried with him in baptism. The same in Romans chapter 6. Yeah, we're going to touch on that here in a minute. So just tuck that away. We'll come back to that here, hopefully here in a minute. Okay, what is an expedient? If I see, I have $1 million check right here for the person who can tell me what a Bible expedient is, the name's blank. If you tell me what it is, right here, I'll put your name in it. What would you say? What's an expedient? Okay. 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 So, is somebody else going to say something? Okay, yeah, the expedient, another form of that is to expedite, okay, which is to make things quicker or more efficient, okay, or easier to be done. Okay, in one word, an expedient is an aid to help in the execution of a command, okay, that we've been given. All right, so there's two Bible laws concerning expedience. We're going to look at both of them. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 23, and I read from the Old King James. Okay, most of your versions, if you're not using the Old King James, are going to use the word profitable, okay, in the place of expedient, okay, which actually helps to kind of cement the picture. Verse 23, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. That's the Old King James. I believe if you're using another version, probably says profitable. I'm not for sure every single version. Okay, all things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Okay, so the one law that we learned about expediency in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 23 is that it must edify. The expedient must build up, must not tear down. Okay? Just because something is expedient, by the way, doesn't mean we have to do it, right? Okay? Just want you to tuck that away. Just because something is expedient doesn't mean we have to do it. Okay, and we'll touch on that here in a few moments. So one is that it must edify. Okay, you see that there in that verse. Okay, 4 chapters back, 1 Corinthians 6 and verse number 12. Okay, similar wording. 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 12. All things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient or profitable. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Okay, so the Bible rule here for expediency is that it must be lawful, meaning that in order for something to be an expedient, there must be a law on the books in God's book that we're trying to execute. We just can't make up a law and then say we're going to find an expedient for it. Okay, there must be a stated law in the New Testament that needs expediting. Okay? that's what we're talking about here in 1 Corinthians 6 and the edification in 1 Corinthians 10. Okay, now before we get into some spiritual examples, let me give you a secular example. If I told you, I need you to change my oil in my car. I need you to change my oil in the car. Are there any aids, expedients that you might use or need and to execute that? What would you need to change the oil in a car? I'm sorry? Yeah, you might need a wrench. You got to get that plug out of the drain pan out the bottom. Plus, you might have to move some stuff around to get to the filters. You might need a filter wrench. Okay, do you have to have those things? Not necessarily. I mean, if you're really strong, I guess you could use your hands. Okay? But those tools expedite, don't they? What else might you need? Yeah, you might need a jack. Okay? You're probably not going to fit under the car with it on the ground because you're going to have to get it up off the ground. Okay, so you're going to use a jack to do that. Okay, what is it? Yeah, a pan. You don't want that going all over your driveway, do you? Because that stains something awful. Hey, it's hard to get that out of your driveway. So you're going to have a drain pan for all the oil to drain in. What else? Anything else you can think of? I'm sorry? An odor manual. What would you need that for, Dwight? Okay, what kind of oil? It's, and the way they put filters in certain places, you may have to find out, hey, where's the filter at? So that'd come in handy, wouldn't it? I heard something else. A funnel. What would you use a funnel for? That's very important in an oil change, isn't it? Yeah, it's hard to just pour that oil without a funnel into the engine oil compartment. So yeah, funnel. Very good. Okay, so you see there's a lot of things. Okay, so I want you to think about all the things we listed here. Okay, I probably can't remember all of them. So we have a jack, a funnel, a wrench, an owner's manual, a drain pan. I'm probably missing something. Okay, do any of those change the fact that I have a drain pan? Change the fact that I'm changing the oil? No, that's not the case. Okay, the fact that I need a wrench, does that change changing the oil? No, you're still using that for that purpose. What if I told you, in order to get an oil change done, I need some brake pads? Is that true? No. Does that have anything to do with changing oil? No. So the brake pads are not an aid to changing, and these are two words that are very important. This is not an aid to changing oil. Okay, I'm looking for a specific word here. It's not an aid. The brake pads are what? It's another A word. It's not an addition. That's exactly right. It changes what we're doing, doesn't it? It changes what we're doing. Now we're no longer changing the oil. What are we doing? We're changing the brakes. Okay, so that's very important to see. Okay, whether something is actually an aid or an addition. To figure out if it's an aid or an addition, we figure out, does it change the command that we're trying to achieve? Okay, so for 10 minutes here now or so, we're going to make application of this, okay, to commands that are in the Bible. Okay, of course, I have a list. Can you guys think of a command in the Bible? Let me get you started. Okay, here's this building here. Okay, this building. Do we have authority for this building? Okay, you guys show me in the Bible. Thou shalt have a church building. Is that in there? Do we have examples of Christians meeting in church buildings? Yeah, we see some synagogue activity. Okay, we really don't see that. We see them more meeting where at. In homes. Okay. They met in Philemon's home, apparently, according to that short epistle later on in the New Testament. In the city of Philippi, by the way, when Paul went there in Acts 16, he found the ladies by the what? Where were they meeting at? By the river. Are we allowed to have services by the river if we wanted to? Absolutely. Okay. There's a verse in the Bible that says, not forsaking the what? Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is. Anybody know where that is? Okay, Hebrews 10:25. Okay, and in that verse, we are authorized to what? To assemble. Meaning we need what? A place to assemble. Okay, this building is a what? This building is an expedient to the command to what? To assemble. Do we have to have a building? No. I've met in nursing homes, funeral homes, senior centers, storefronts, back home in Vincennes before we were able to secure the building. We were meeting in a hotel meeting room. You probably have met in a number of other places. Okay? Because we're commanded not to forsake the assembling, we're commanded to assemble. Therefore, we need a place to what? To assemble. Okay? This building is an expedient to the command to what? To assemble. Okay, now, we don't have time to get into this, so just let me throw this in real quick. Okay, drinking fountains, bathrooms, restrooms, okay, are two big lightning rods for some people. Okay, most every building you ever go into are going to have a drinking fountain and restrooms. Okay, those two are what? Those two are expedients, okay, to assemble. Do we have to have them? Do we have to have restrooms in the building? No. Do we have to have a water fountain? No. Okay. Does the fact that we have restrooms in this building and a drinking fountain change the fact that we are assembling? No. Okay. That means that there are an aid and not what? Not in addition. Okay. So, look around the room. What other expedients do you see in this room? Are there more expedients in this room besides the building itself?
Got lights.
Okay, that would fall, yeah. Yeah, everything attached to this building, okay, falls under the building expedient. The lights, okay, the carpet, the chairs. Do you have to have, I can keep saying it. You don't have to have carpet. You could have vinyl planks. You don't have to have chairs. I know when I was here, we had pews, okay. Could we all sit on the floor? We could. We could. Not very long, that's right. Okay, which goes to the edifying part, okay, that we saw there in 1 Corinthians 10:23. So everything you see, for the most part, is an expedient to assemble. Okay, there are some things you see in here that are not, but they're actually expedients to other commands. Like what? What? Think about the 5 things we're going to do today. What are those 5 channels of worship we're going to do today? What's one of them? We're going to sing. Are there any expedients in this room to singing? Songbooks. Okay. Microphone is an expedient. We don't have to have either one of those, do we? Okay, we don't. Okay, we're not commanded to have those. We are told to sing, and so we're going to expedite that with songbooks. Okay, some places have the software up on the screen. Is that okay? That's fine. That's an expedient to that as well. Let me throw a wrench into this. What about a pitch pipe? You ever been in a conversation with somebody about a pitch pipe? Is a pitch pipe an expedient or an addition to the command to sing? Or aid. Maybe I should say aid. Okay? I've never looked this up. I've said it a time or two before. I bet if I went on YouTube and found and put in "man plays a song on pitch pipe," okay, you think I'm probably going to find one? Probably. Yeah, there's probably somebody talented enough to do that. Not me. Okay, maybe you, but not me. Okay. So when a guy gets up here to lead the songs, is he playing a song on that pitch pipe? No, he's getting the starting note, isn't he? Okay, so it's an aid to singing. Okay, so singing. What else? What's another thing we're going to do today? We're going to pray. Is there any expedience to praying in here? Microphone. Microphone's one. If you have a microphone, you ought to try to use that if you can, so everybody can hear. So yeah, prayer. What else are we going to do? Preach. Any expedience to preaching in here today? Okay, pew Bibles. I'm sorry?
Microphone.
Yeah, microphone. Pulpit. Yeah, do we have to have a pulpit? Do we have to have a raised pulpit? We don't, but it's profitable, isn't it? Because when a man is above everybody else, his voice tends to do what? Carry better, okay, as it does with the microphone. Okay, the pew, like I heard somebody say, the pew Bibles are an expedient to that end for, of course, studying our Bibles. Is a preacher, a located preacher, an expedient? Could he be viewed as an expedient? He could. Okay. Do you have to have a located preacher? No, we're not commanded to. Okay, we're not commanded to. Were there located preachers in the Bible? Yes. Paul was located in Corinth for how long? 18 months. He was located in Ephesus for how long? 3 years. By the space of 3 years, he says in Acts 20, I cease not to warn every one of you night and day with tears. Okay, so there was, preacher, a located preacher is an expedient, okay, to the command to preach. Okay, what's the other two things we got missing so far? I'm sorry? Communion, Lord's Supper. Any expedience to that? These trays. Do we have to have these? Don't have to have them. Okay, do we have to have little cups? No. Some places don't have little cups. Some places have what? 1 cup. Is that okay, by the way? That's okay. Provided what? And don't give me the sickness thing. Provided what? What am I looking for here? Provided they don't take their scruple or their opinion on that and do what with it? And tell us that we're wrong because we have multiple containers. Okay? But the little containers and the trays, they're expedient. You don't have to have them, but they expedite the command to do the Lord's Supper. Okay? Microphone again. This table. Do we have to have this table that says, in remembrance of me for the Lord's Supper? Do we have to have this? No. Is this an expedient? Yes. We could just put the trays right here in the chairs. Not even have this. Would that be okay? That'd be fine. Okay, that'd be fine. Okay, and the other one, giving. Any expedience to giving? Yeah, I think you guys. What do you guys have here? Those trays, baskets. Okay, have to have those? No, I guess a guy could walk around with a bank bag open and just everybody could put it in the bank bag. That'd be pretty nice, wouldn't it? Okay, for whoever the treasurer is. Okay, but we have that because it's a convenient and expedited way to take care of giving on the first day of the week. Okay, as we see in 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2. Okay, so the big one is the one I hear the most about is the building. Okay, you don't have any authority for the building. Certainly we do. Okay, it's an expedient to the fact that we are to assemble. Now, does it have to be super fancy? No, it doesn't have to be super fancy at all. Does it have to be huge? No. Okay, it just has to meet the needs of the congregation that is meeting within the confines of that building. Okay, any other, we got, 2 minutes here? Any other commands other than those? Okay, baptism. Okay, and Don brought this up a few moments ago. All right, so baptism. Any expedience in this building for baptism? Baptistry. By show of hands, how many folks who have been baptized were baptized somewhere other than the baptistry? Not me, but a river, lake, swimming pool. Okay, so I see a couple. Okay, is that okay? I'm sure some of you, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but some of you are probably old enough to remember there may have not ever been a baptistry in the building. There may have been a creek next to the building. You may have went down to the Ohio River. I've heard people tell stories. They had to break the ice to baptize somebody. That's okay, isn't it? Okay. Do we have to have a baptistry? No. But it expedites the command to what? To baptize. Okay. As well as, I presume there's a heater on it, and there used to be some styrofoam over it to keep it warm. Those things. Are there any waiters back there? Any waiters back here? Okay. How many folks have baptized somebody before? Okay. Did you wear waiters? Okay. Do you have to have them? No, you don't have to. Does it make it easier? It does. Okay. There's a lot of buildings, by the way, that are going now to no preacher baptistries, where the preacher is behind it and he uses the baptistry in front. Okay. I guess we're out of time. So, yeah, but baptism is a command. There's several things in this building that expedite that command. Okay, I appreciate your attention.